there such a thing as an SUV that genuinely drives like a performance car? You know, not something that's just fast, but something that's agile, light on its feet, feels connected to you and the road. Well, Alfa Romeo thinks there is, and they reckon they've built one. You see that little four-leaf clover over there? This is the Stelvio Quadrifoglio, the hardest, fastest Stelvio to date, and the car that just broke the record at the Nürburgring. And that's quite a lot of hype, so let's go and see if it lives up to it. Back when Alfa Romeo first announced it would be turning its attention to the brand's first ever SUV and promised it would drive like a performance car, you could almost feel the wind rush from a billion eyebrows being raised incredulously at the exact same time. But then they went and broke the Nürburgring lap record for sports utility vehicles, and the world started paying attention. And so the very Bond-sounding Stelvio Q will arrive in Australia around the middle of next year, and while Alfa has so far kept quiet on local pricing, expect to be paying somewhere to the north of $150,000. So let's take a quick tour of Alfa Romeo Stelvio Q. Even when the Italians were making more questionable cars, they always knew a thing or two about design, and this one is really and truly very good looking. It's aggressive in all the right places, from the bonnet vents to the flared guards, but somehow manages to look both tough and pretty at the same time, and it also looks fast. Now these 20-inch alloys are blacked out, and behind them are Alfa Romeo stamped red brake calipers, and at the back you'll find 4 exhaust tips poking out from behind that shapely rump. But of course there's one thing on here that truly matters, and that's this, the 4-leaf clover stamped on the side, which is always a sign of good things to come. Along with those alloys and big Brembo brakes, you'll find bi-xenon headlights, LED taillights and keyless entry, while technology is handled by an 8.8-inch touchscreen that's both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto equipped. Nav is standard too, and there's a 7-inch TFT screen in the driver's binnacle that handles all the driving data. So step inside the Q and you will find a fairly performance-focused cabin. These optional carbon seats are super figure-hugging. This Alcantara-wrapped steering wheel feels lovely under the touch, and I particularly like this Ferrari-inspired engine start-stop button. But even though there is that performance focus, there's still plenty of practicality in here. 2 cup holders up front, 2 more in the back seat, and there's an ISOFIX attachment point in each of the window seats in the back. And although it might not be the biggest in the segment, you can legitimately lug the family around in this thing. Downsides in here, well, some of the cabin technology does feel a little bit dated, and some of the touch points are a little bit loose under touch. They kind of move around a little bit more than I'd like them to. But under that bonnet is where things get really serious. That absolutely stonking bi-turbo V6, which pairs with an 8-speed automatic transmission, makes a whopping 375 kilowatts and 600 newton meters of torque, and all that power is pummeled into the tarmac, care of the Stelvio's clever 4-wheel drive system, which sends every ounce of power to the rear wheels, unless it senses you're losing grip, then directs 50% of the grunt to the front axle. That's enough to clip 100 kilometers an hour in 3.8 seconds and push on to a top speed of 284 kilometers an hour. Alfa's active torque vectoring, adaptive dampers, and a configurable drive system with 5 modes all appear as standard on the Q2. But all those numbers are, of course, just that, numbers. And they all count for squat if this thing's a big, heavy, lumbering thing that's no good to throw around corners. But I can tell you, this is none of those things. It's so lightweight, so agile. For one, there's the sound. It sounds absolutely fantastic. It's not overdone, it doesn't explode into the cabin, and it doesn't sound fake, it sounds really natural. But it's such a great soundtrack to this car. But the other real highlight is the steering. It is so direct, so pinpoint. You feel so in touch with the road below the tyres. It's fantastic. You know the car's going to go exactly where you point it. Alfa Romeo calls this car the Ferrari of SUVs, and they're 3/4 right. Under that bonnet, of course, is the twin-turbo V6, the same that's in the Giulia QV sedan, which just happens to be 3/4 of Ferrari's stumping V8 engine, the one used in the California T. And in a car like this, 3/4 of Ferrari is absolutely plenty. It is so much fun. So to give you an idea of the fanfare that goes along with this car, this is a simple standing start in race mode, which of course means the exhaust is at its loudest. And if you just listen to the way it climbs those gears, the beautiful little burble on the change, it is just so addictive. It does not feel like you're driving an SUV. It's probably not as sharp as the sedan equivalent, in this case the Giulia QV, but this is far and away the most fun I've ever had driving an SUV. Now it's worth pointing out here that we are on this perfectly smooth, perfectly twisting piece of tarmac outside Dubai, a road called the Jebel Jai Pass. And it is an absolutely incredible road. It's the Middle East answer to the Stelvio Pass. The problem is it is so beautifully smooth that it's like they've launched this car on a racetrack. So we'll reserve judgment on how it'll perform on Australia's roads until it arrives in the country towards the middle of next year. But I'll tell you, if this is a sample, it points to a lot of good things to come.